It's blinking red.
It says live.
All right. Well, I
I
guess
think
we're
that's it.
here. Oh, wow. That was easy. It's easier than getting through TSA pre-check. Hey, everybody. This is Clarissa Mall, producer and moderator of the Bulletin, and we're glad to have you here tonight. We're going to just say hello to folks as you start coming on in. So drop your name in the comments. Let us know who you are and where you're coming from. And yeah, we're just glad to have you here. We have, I feel like a Luddite getting online like this. It's been a long time since I was live before an internet audience. Mike, did you ever do any of those? Like, are you even on TikTok? Did you do any of those trendy things where you day in
No,
the life, casual
no,
moments with
definitely
Mike?
not.
Okay.
I am not on. I am not on TikTok. Though more for national security reasons than
Okay.
anything else. But also, yeah, I mean, I did the MySpace thing when MySpace launched, right? Like I was a
Yeah.
musician then, and you kind of had to be on MySpace, or at least they told you that. And then when I first got on Facebook, I kind of did the "here's what I'm having for breakfast" post for a few days, but
Okay.
I got over that pretty fast. It just felt like I don't care what anyone else is having for breakfast. Why would they
Yeah.
care what I'm having for breakfast? So, but
Yeah.
I am terminally on Twitter, so I'm not a person to critique anybody else's social media habits.
Oh, well, I should actually say who you are officially. I guess this is Mike
Hmm.
Cosper, our senior commentator for the Bulletin, and yes, Twitter aficionado. I feel like it's my goal in 2025 to get you off of Twitter. Maybe I
It
could
might
partner with your wife to make
listen.
this
It might
happen
be
for you.
Elon Musk's goal to get me off of Twitter because
Yeah.
it's definitely a different jungle out there than it used to be. So
Oh my goodness. Well, hey Dan, joining us from Minneapolis. Awesome. Thanks for being with us today. I bet it's colder than where it is in here in Boston. It was 9 degrees when I drove my kids to school this morning. I could
mm,
not believe it. Like that's too cold for humanity.
for
Um,
sure.
but anyways, um, yeah. All right. Well, let's get started. I'm running on some pizza for dinner on a night like tonight. We just sort of, basketball season is ending, and but play practice is still going on, so we never really have everyone around the table. So this was a pizza night for us. What'd you have for dinner?
Burgers. It was burger night.
Oh, did you make them?
I did make them, and yeah, and the kids were off school today. We had a snow day, so
Okay.
we were supposed to get like 5 inches. We got like an inch and a half, but we're supposed to get more overnight. So we'll see what happens.
That's okay. You don't need to say it like you're embarrassed. An inch and a half is a lot for a
Yeah,
southerner, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Does
Fair enough.
Louisville have plows?
We do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and they do a pretty. If it's not, we had like a 14-inch snow earlier this year, and if we're not getting hit with something like that, we can handle it pretty well. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Ooh, let's see. We got somebody in
we
Central
got
Maryland.
we got
It's
Rhonda
snowing
with us, Kevin
impressively.
Ingalls with us tonight.
Oh, I
So
love
yeah,
it.
it's exciting.
Oh, this is so fantastic. Oh my goodness, wind chill of -9. Okay, Dan, you win the prize. That you win the prize. Stay inside and have a burger, Dan. Well, speaking of food, I feel like we should get to the topics at hand, Mike, tonight. I was reading that the National Chicken Council estimated that Americans would consume 1.47 billion chicken wings this past Sunday for the Super Bowl. And I mean, not only does that number make my stomach a little bit queasy, but it's hard for me to imagine because I'm in a true confession moment here. I didn't watch the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
I stayed home, so I really don't know what went on, except for that I've been seeing the headlines that this was kind of a big deal. And I suspect it wasn't actually because of the football. Is that right?
Well, I mean, it was an interesting game. If you're a Philly fan, it was a great game because Philly just absolutely annihilated the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, uh, it wasn't entirely unpredictable. If you've watched the Chiefs much this year, a lot of their wins were by the skin of their teeth or by virtue of like a really lucky call by a referee. Their offensive line has been terrible all year long, and Philly just ate their lunch at the O-line, and that was the game. That was the entire game, was what happened with the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line, and a great offensive performance by the Eagles. So mostly a boring game, but the most watched Super Bowl of all time. I think it was
Oh,
like
wow.
137 million viewers. And I think there's been a lot of talk about the halftime show. It was a fascinating halftime show from Kendrick Lamar, and surprising in a lot of different ways, but not terribly surprising if you're familiar with Kendrick and kind of what he is about.
I was really proud of myself when I saw the headline, Kendrick Lamar wins the Super Bowl. And I was like, I know he's not a player. I know
Right.
this. I mean, I don't know if he's a player, but he's not a player. So Kendrick Lamar, he feels to me culturally like a little bit of an oddity
Hmm.
because he won the Pulitzer for music. He's a rapper. He has this like earthy urbanness to him. Um, and what I read in the news was that, some people saw this halftime show as a real wow theatrical moment, and others were like, where's the spectacle?
Hmm.
What side of the spectrum did you fall on?
I thought it was a pretty incredible performance, and I thought it was a very interesting performance as well. So there were a couple of things that stuck out about it to me. One was, a lot of times with these halftime shows, they are about the spectacle, and rightly so. I mean, to try and perform, the bigger the room is, the bigger what happens on stage is supposed to be, and it's very difficult to, I mean, as a musician who's played many small venues, the bigger the room is, the more you kind of have to play big, like
Hmm.
do put more of a show on. What was interesting was the degree to which Kendrick made the show small. There weren't, he had just a couple of collaborators on stage performing with him. Um, it wasn't kind of a parade of all of his partnerships. You can get anybody in the world to come perform with you at the Super Bowl, and he just had a couple. The staging was very, very, very simple. He opens, with a car, gets out of the car, kind of performs around the car, but the symbolism of what took place on the stage was really remarkable. There was a lot of red, white, and blue symbolism. There was a lot of imagery that was just leaning into American flag kind of imagery. The show was introduced and kind of transitioned and commented upon throughout by Samuel L. Jackson in an Uncle
Uncle
Sam
Sam. Yeah.
costume. Yeah, and I think there's no question that this was a deliberate, I think, a deliberate response to a part of the performance was a deliberate response to what we just saw with the elections and what's been going on in the country post the election. Um, I mean, the reference I kept actually thinking about watching it was that there's this great Langston Hughes poem called I Too, and the opening line of the poem is I Too Am America. And it basically describes the experience of a young black man who
Mhm.
works in service in a white person's home, and but essentially says the promises of America are for me, and the day is coming when you'll notice me, and that I'm beautiful and that I belong here, essentially. And in the light of all of this talk about what does it mean to be American,
Mhm.
this push towards deportation, this push towards sort of Christian nationalism, the monoculture that kind of comes along with that, oftentimes the very white monoculture that comes along with that. Kendrick Lamar was very deliberately saying, I too am America. Like these images belong to us and to our community as well. And I think it was a beautiful thing in that sense.
Mm. What is the role of President Trump being there play in all this? Because he was the first president ever to attend a
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Is that significant in any way?
I mean, I think it certainly intensifies the messaging in a lot of
Okay.
ways. I don't, I don't know when Trump announced that he was planning to go. So who's to say how much that went into the planning for the choreography and the staging and everything else. I think it was more. It strikes me as unlikely that he did that knowing that Trump was there, but doing it with Trump there again just intensifies the message. And I think it also just another moment in the show where I think communicated that message actually was there was a really interesting moment in so Kendrick Lamar last year had this sort of diss war. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly how you
Can you
describe that.
that's like we make fun of each other by making different
Yeah, so basically, Drake writes a song attacking Kendrick Lamar, criticizing
uh-huh.
him for various things, and I mean, it was maybe the worst decision Drake has ever made because Kendrick Lamar went on to win a Grammy for the diss
Yeah, he's
track. That,
brilliant.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
brilliant. You don't get into a diss battle with Kendrick Lamar. Like add that to the list. Like never start a land war in Asia. Never get into diss battle with Kendrick Lamar, and but during that particular song, there's this moment where it flashes to out of nowhere Serena Williams
Mm-hmm.
on stage, crip walking to the
Who
song.
is Drake's
So
ex-girlfriend?
so there's rumors about that. Apparently
Okay.
that's not
Okay.
confirmed, but that was kind of the
Okay.
leaning into that rumor. Um, and so I think like a lot of things that Kendrick does, I think that moment in particular operates on two different levels.
Mm.
One is that yes, like okay, to the rumors, here she is, she's on stage dancing to this diss track, like, hey Drake, you suck, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the other element of it is there was this very infamous incident in 2012 when she won Wimbledon, and when she won, they played this
Yeah.
song. They played a different song in the stadium, and she did that dance. She did this crip walk dance, and got a lot of criticism for it. Like this is Wimbledon. This is like all the class stuff that comes along with a sport like tennis or a sport like
And it
golf.
was racially motivated too, wasn't
Right.
it? Like
Yeah.
the,
Some of it
that's
certainly
too
was.
black kind
Right.
of,
Right.
yeah,
It doesn't
real
belong
slur
here and all
kind of
this stuff.
stuff. Hmm.
And so yeah, so it was a throwback to that, and it was a throwback to that in a way that just was again kind of this celebration of we are a people. We're from she's from Compton. He's Kendrick Lamar is from Compton. We're America too. Like we
Yeah.
belong here too, and it's a celebration of that fact in the face of kind of political uncertainty and political defeat. I think for a lot of people on the left, and if you read Kendrick's lyrics, he's very much a person of the left.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit that one of the reasons why the Super Bowl has always been kind of unattractive for me as a family viewing event is the content. Like a lot of it is not friendly. When
Right.
I had little kids, it was like, okay, shield your eyes from all of the cheerleaders. We're panning close to everybody on the sidelines, or
Right.
some of the commercial content is kind of racy, and I think that reading about Lamar's halftime show, this moment in the show when he's dissing Drake as a pedophile. That felt it wasn't so much the lyrics to me because I get the whole like, diss war thing going on culturally, but it feels really ick to me to have
Hmm.
this whole stadium of people shouting out a minor, especially when I think about like overlaying that with everything we know about human trafficking on the day of the Super Bowl, that like the numbers skyrocket in whatever city is
Right.
hosting. Um, it just feels like, do we have to? Is this? I mean, is this where we're at now?
Yeah. I mean,
Am I? Am I just being a mom? Is that my response?
well, no. I
It's
mean, I think it's a reasonable thing to not like. There's nothing. There's nothing that feels good about hearing anyone call someone else, accuse someone
yeah,
else
yeah,
of that sort of thing. And to be fair, it's all done with innuendo. It's very, it's not direct. I don't think he ever sort of comes right out and says it.
yeah.
So we don't want to libel anyone or anything like that. But yeah, I know there's something there is something uncomfortable about it for sure. Is it any more uncomfortable than say the Black Eyed Peas performance, which
Yeah.
was not like that but was highly sexualized? And
Yeah.
is it any worse than what we see with um, with the commercials in particular as
Mhm.
well? The Carl's Jr. commercial came back this year with the this very sexualized commercial for hamburgers. So I think it all sort of it's all of a piece, unfortunately, and Yeah, if you have little kids, they probably shouldn't be watching it. I mean, if you have
Yeah,
little kids, they shouldn't be listening to Kendrick Lamar. And I say that as a
no.
Kendrick fan. He is. There's
Or
a
staying up
reason.
past halftime.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's an E on that album.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that
you
makes
know.
sense. Well, y'all, if you've got a question for us, stick it in the comments. Jake, I appreciate that. How dare you inject nuance? Yes, you know what? Even in the Super Bowl, we're going to attempt it here on the bulletin. Yeah,
And I
if you got a
appreciate Jamie's comment that the most offensive thing was Tom Brady's commentary. So, but that's another conversation.
and as a Bostonian, I do not stand with Tom Brady. I wanted that on the record. That needs to be recorded. Yeah, if you got a question for us in the comments, stick it there. We'd love to answer your questions. Well, you know, I admit that when it comes to the Super Bowl, there's some stuff that I just won't understand, and there have been a lot of things, a lot of headlines this week that have just been a mystery to me. One of them being, what's going on with these JFK files? Is this like, you know, I am not a conspiracy theorist. That is not where my mind goes, but what's going on? And is there something actually to be discovered here?
Yeah. So the details on this. So I guess it was January 23rd, President Trump signs this executive order mandating declassification of all of the FBI files on the assassination of JFK, Robert Kennedy Sr., and Martin Luther King Jr. It's it's I believe I'm looking at my notes here. It's supposed to happen within 45 days. Uh, in the time since he signed this order, the FBI has discovered 2,400 previously unseen records related to the JFK assassination, totaling more than 14,000 pages. These haven't been viewed by the disclosure board. Like, so this is like a board that looks to figure out like what can go to the public, what needs to be redacted, what's classified, and all the rest. And they were withheld from the National Archives. There's some interesting questions around. Okay, what does that even mean? Why do the National Archives not have these things at this point? It's possible that these documents are going to provide a bunch of helpful context and give us some insights into what was going on in the background. I personally I'm personally skeptical that it's going to shed light on some new theory that
Yeah.
hasn't been explored before. What's just as likely is that in the data dump of an investigation that spanned many years, went in many different directions, had sort of competing factions of the FBI looking for different interpretations of what had happened. It seems very likely that if you want to find something in this mess of documents that haven't been vetted, you're going to find what you want to find. And so, to me, this is a coup, and by that I mean like a giant win for the likes of InfoWars, the Alex Joneses of the world, who are going to be able to go into this thing, find some harebrained theory that maybe an FBI agent worked on and chased and developed a paper trail on for a few weeks, and then it didn't go anywhere. You're going to be able to pick this thing up 50, 60 years later and say, oh, actually, here's what really happened. Like, here's the thing they've been hiding from us all this time that was a needle in a haystack, when actually it was an investigation that went to a dead end. I think we're going to see a lot of that kind of thing.
Well, speaking of investigations that have been cryptic over time, West Memphis 3, which is the focus of your new show, Devil in Deep Blue Sea, that is a story that runs through that. And we've got a question for you. What prompted you to select Satanic Panic as a podcast topic? And honestly, I would like to know because I've never asked you this.
Yeah, no, it's so I'm a child of the 80s and 90s myself. I remember when the Paradise Lost documentary dropped in, I think it was 95 or so. I was in high school, and I just remember, looking at the kids in that documentary at the time and feeling like I know these people, right? Like, not literally, but like,
And this is
figuratively.
Paradise Lost is the story of the
Right.
West
It's
Memphis
the first
3.
documentary that was made about the West Memphis Three from the time of their arrest through their trials and convictions.
Okay.
And if you watch the doc, it becomes pretty clear, pretty evident that that these three kids are kind of being railroaded on suspicions that don't fully add up. Now, at the time, you didn't have a lot of the kind of counter evidence that comes later to kind of fully prove their innocence or anything like that. But the story really, at the time, really struck me, and it's always struck me for two reasons. One being that I felt like I knew who these folks were. I went to junior high with people exactly like this. Those Metallica T-shirts, those mullets, like it was all familiar. And then the second reason it was interesting to me was the sense that the sense that the other side of the debate, the church side of it, the fear and the anxiety around the Satanist next door. I grew up with that stuff as well. Like, I watched the Hell's Bells documentary in church youth group. We were pressured to burn our non-Christian records. We, I remember the flyer being passed around in elementary school that said, if you want to get your candy x-rayed before you eat it, to make sure there's no hypodermic needles or razor blades in there.
I remember that.
You can bring it to Floyd Memorial Hospital on Halloween night and get in line, and they'll x-ray your candy.
And that was all related.
So it was all, to me, it was all connected, because the same kind of anxieties that led to these fears about child abduction, these fears about poisoned candy, these fears about heavy metal, all this, the downstream consequences of that was the false convictions of people like Damien Eccles and the West Memphis Three. So this podcast is really looking at, we kind of start with that story in the first episode, and then ask, well, how does something like this happen? How do we get our way there? And what we're doing, in the first 3 episodes or so is just setting the stage. How did we end up in this place where this panic really sort of erupts in 1981, and it runs like wildfire for a decade or more, and then it just disappears. It just ended. It essentially, without much fanfare, this idea that there was a cabal of Satanists in daycares around the country, trafficking children, murdering them, just kind of disappears from our culture. And now we look at it and we laugh, but then again, people like Damien Eccles are dealing with the fact that they're a convicted felon and still have that charge hanging over their head.
Well, I got to admit, I don't really laugh. I mean, I think about like when we produced the Be Afraid podcast about horror movies, that kind of stuff gives me the willies. And even the content of this podcast, growing up in the Frank Peretti generation of This Present Darkness, and he had the kids series that you read before you read the adult books. You had this real sense that there were principalities and powers that were unseen, that there was stuff that was evil that lurked around. And I wonder, as you interface with this content, do you feel a sense, and maybe this is a question that is equally appropriate for somebody who is a war correspondent or is, talking with people who are on death row or whatever, but do you feel a sense of darkness as you're interfacing with that content where you're just like, okay, I need to be in the Word more, or I need connection with a body of Christians more to make me, to remind me of what is true and good and beautiful in the midst of this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Certainly. I think the thing that is disturbing to me, so kind of the tagline for this show, is the idea that we're looking at how chasing phantoms distracts us from the real devils next door. And so part of what we've seen in evangelicalism in the last number of years is, you can go back to, I think it was 2018 or maybe it was 2020 when the Houston Chronicle dropped this bombshell story about sexual abuse in the Southern Baptist Convention going back 2 decades. And, you look at some of the figures that were connected to that story and who eventually, some of them were held accountable in ways that led to the ends of their jobs and other things, and some people were not. But if you look at that story, you have a lot of people who were at the heart of church leadership and were using that position to act in predatory ways. You have other church leaders who were made aware of these things and looked the other way, made excuses for it, transitioned people out of the staff of their church onto the staff of somebody else's church, basically setting the predator up to be able to do it again. So there is this history, this very uncomfortable history in the church of the way we've handled sexual abuse. It's much like the way much like the way the Catholic Church mishandled sexual abuse that was, exposed in the Spotlight investigations in the Boston Chronicle. So, or the Boston Globe.
Boston Globe.
Yeah, and so essentially, the point being, at the same time that the church was having this obsession, and that the culture was having this obsession with, regression memory and, these investigative techniques that many of which have been thoroughly debunked at this point, there was unbelievable horror happening to children in our churches, but it was happening in these very sort of pedestrian, mundane, quote unquote, normal ways, which is, it was the stepbrother, it was the pastor's kid, it was the, whatever. And, the part of the point that we want to get at in the show is that the consequences of that kind of abuse are every bit as devastating and every bit as evil and satanic as what we imagine.
Yeah. It's like we were fearing all the wrong things.
We were, and we gravitate towards that, though, because that is an easier evil to kind of package and put in a box and say, well, I know how to protect my kid from this, right? I know how to protect my kid from, I know the right steps to take, to protect my kid from Satanists that are doing these horrible things. Keep them out of the Satanic coven, right?
Yeah, or like Jamie says in the comments, keep your kid from playing D&D.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You can cut yourself off from the culture without necessarily being safe from anything. When the predators, as in the case of the Duggar family that we talked about in the first episode, the predator's in the next room.
I love that. That's really good. It reminds me of what Cutter Calloway, who produced our Be Afraid podcast, said, that the intention is that as Christians we learn to fear rightly. I like that. It's really interesting. Okay, it helps me to kind of go into heavier content like that. I mean, I feel like when everything is so heavy in the world, to add on heavy content feels like another weight, but having that kind of context and perspective is really helpful for me in thinking about like how you approach even the storytelling within it. It's really great. Well, Craig, thanks for your comment that these podcasts have helped you to appreciate Christians who are working through deconstruction. Yeah, it's helpful to be able to understand what other people are seeing, to see the things that they're wrestling with, and gives us a spirit of charity and compassion. Speaking of compassion, I want to get to Dan's question. He asks, how can Christians and churches help fill the void left by the pause in foreign aid? Are there trustworthy resources we can and should donate to? Well, last week you had talked to somebody from World Relief, right? About the work that they were attempting to continue to do now that foreign aid has been cut off?
Yeah, I think that might be a good place to even start, would be to look for some of the orgs who have lost their aid. World Relief is a significant one. The challenge with this, though, is, and that actually gets to one of the issues that I think is so important in this conversation. We're often seeing Christians online saying something to the effect of, Christians that are supportive of cutting off the aid, this is work the church should be doing. The church should fund it. Let's cut off the aid and get the funding to the organizations directly if you think that they deserve it. And the challenge is just when you start talking about like the economies of scale with all of this. There's a reason there's certain things you want the government to do. There's work that gets done through USAID that is that they are capable of, because they're capable of handling. USAID can handle the logistics. So what the money that goes to, let's say, World Relief and working with refugees, that's actually one piece of a whole string of initiatives that are working to, help refugees get out of war-torn regions. In the case of, these Afghan refugees, the story I've been following, these people who are basically, if they don't get to someplace like the U.S., they're going to be forced back to either Pakistan or Afghanistan, where their lives are very much in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And so even giving directly to World Relief has its limits in what it can achieve. It's not like World Relief someone can write a check for $1 billion to World Relief, and all of a sudden these aid issues are going to be okay, and they're going to be able to get everybody else through. Um, the yeah, there's so many steps in the process. So along with giving to organizations that have lost funding, which I'm not saying don't do that. I think if you feel called to do that, you absolutely should. The other thing people can do is they can reach out to the lawmakers that represent them. Mm-hmm. Don't call a lawmaker that doesn't represent you. Don't call Ted Cruz because you're mad at Ted Cruz. Call your representatives and say that this matters, and be as specific as possible. Make sure they know you're one of their constituents, and that's how you can get attention to the people who are trying to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful that when sort of the reorganization of this is done and it falls into the State Department, a lot of the spigot for a lot of this stuff gets turned back on, because the value, particularly of things like PEPFAR, are so well known, so well recognized, so well documented. But those are things you can pray for, and I would say that's one of the most important things for Christians who think this is a good thing to do, is to make your voice heard.
Yeah, I'm also reminded of what Justin Gibney often says when he's on the show, what Michael Ware says about these things that feel so big and far away, that the best action that we can take is literally in our neighborhood, in our community. And while, you may not have a community organization that is being funded by USAID, there is charitable work, there is work of compassion that you can do in your own community that I think actually exercises the muscles that we need to stick for the long haul. Like, Americans are super good at giving after a natural disaster, like everybody shows up for Katrina, or everybody is swamped, with donations after the wildfires. I mean, you even see it on small scale, like after someone dies, they're like inundated with casseroles, but it's the 6 months later, it's the year later, where communities still need that kind of care. And most Americans, our posture is to helicopter in, offer care, and then leave and go to the next disaster. And, investing in your community gives you the chance to stick around and walk with the people through all of the different parts of rebuilding after a natural disaster, or, grieving after a major tragedy in their community, and see people eyeball to eyeball, which I think only serves to increase our compassion in a way that is going to be demonstrable in a large scale like that. Like, in some ways, I wonder if the reason why USAID in some spaces has seemed so easy to quit is because we don't see people eyeball to eyeball in that way anymore. And when you don't feel the effects of compassion, when you're not receiving it, when you're not giving it, it's easy to forget how powerful that exchange can be. So, excellent question. Excellent question from Dan.
I would
go
say
ahead.
as well,
Yeah.
real quick. It's worth looking for sure. Go online and look for things like the issue in all of this, where I feel like, and I'm a broken record on this. I think this is probably the fourth or fifth time I've talked about this, but the refugee resettlement stuff is the stuff that bothers me the most.
Yeah.
Because these are people who America made a promise to them, and they have done it the right way. They have taken the steps. So you might look at your local community and see, is there someone doing refugee resettlement in the area where we live? And then reach out to them and say, do you need help? What kind of help do you need? What can we offer? What can we provide? I see my friend Jamie on here. Jamie works with Catholic Charities. He doesn't work in refugee resettlement, but Catholic Charities does refugee resettlement in our city. And so that's one example where these things often do touch your community. And they're not that hard to find as well, because they're building their websites and online platforms to try to get you to find them so that you can help them. Yeah. So take a look, and I think, again, with refugee resettlement in particular, we made a promise to these people. We need to keep it.
Yeah. I think, I am supremely grateful for the Quaker woman who sponsored my grandfather when he was 13 years old to come as a refugee to the United States, to Boston. I'm so grateful for her. It was
Yeah.
her church community that said, we will take on Jewish refugees. And they sponsored kids and families. It was such an amazing gift that has been passed down through the generations, and it was just one local woman being faithful. So, yeah, I love the call to see people right in front of us and do something there. Justin, you've got a question for us. How do you guys select and prepare for your Friday episodes? Oh, how is the sausage made? How is the sausage made? Well, we read a lot. We read a lot. We meet together in writers' room conversations, and we try to think about, you know, it, you can get your news anywhere, right? You get it through social media, you get it through online, through apps, news outlet apps. But what is distinctive about what you get at the Bulletin? And there are a couple things that I think of when I'm looking at headlines. I want to make sure that you're informed about what's going on in the world. I know you're busy and you're looking for clarity on what is actually happening to cut through a lot of the hype that's out there. And so we want to give you clear and fair reporting. The second thing we want to offer you is commentary that fits your life. There are lots of erudite people out there. We like to think that we're smart too, but we always want to be approachable, because part of what the Christian story is about hospitality, and we want news that you can use. And so the idea is that our content is always approachable, so that it's news you can use in your small group, news that you can use in conversations around the kitchen table. Because really, one of the things that we're hoping our show will be is not only an antidote to the kind of news fear that is out there right now about polarizing content, about fake news, that kind of stuff, that there's going to be clarity on the content, but it will also be a space for building community, because we want to cut back on the loneliness epidemic. We want to cut down on the lack of gathering that people are doing because of polarization. And we actually believe that the news can be a tool to make that happen for Christians. So, those are some of the things I think about when I'm looking at which headlines to choose. Mike, what do you think about?
Yeah, I mean, this is cheesy, and this goes back to
I like cheese.
the great. No, not what I'm about. Yeah, what I'm about to say. This goes back to the great Ted Olson. One of the first things Ted Olson talked to me about when it came to CT. But it's the C and the T.
Yeah.
It's the Christianity and the today. What's going on in the world right now, and of all the many things that are going on in the world right now, what matters to the church? What are the questions that the church is asking? And we one of the joys I think we have at being at Christianity Today is we have an audience that's really engaged with the world, which opens up a lot of topics for us. We get to talk about and explore a lot of different ideas here, and a lot of different things that matter, and we get to talk to a lot of people. I mean, I think about last week's, the last 5 days Bulletin lineup. We've had my friend Roger Berkowitz on today. We had Yuval Levine on Friday. We had Mindy Bells on Friday. And we had one more. Who was the other guest that joined us on Friday? Why am I missing?
Noah Rothman was
Noah
here.
Rothman from National
We had
Review was
Elizabeth
on as
Newman
well.
last week too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's for us, it's a lot of fun just to get to talk to these writers and journalists. And I would put Noah. I would put Yuval Levine up there as maybe the most important constitutional scholar in the U.S. right now. And he came on and talked to us about, hey, is this a constitutional crisis?
But he didn't make me feel dumb.
No,
like it's
and he
such
made us feel a little better. Like,
yeah.
Probably not yet. There's some things that worry him, but and then similar with Roger. I mean, Roger's an intellect that I'm followed and admired for many years, and we get to talk with him and translate what what the ideas he's wrestling with as a political theorist into, well, how does this matter for the church? And I think that's a real joy and a privilege for us.
Yeah. Well, hey to Bill from Dallas, Texas. Thanks for joining us. And Darren, thanks for your suggestion about a nonprofit that could be helpful for people. Check out those comments in the chat and stick your question in there if you want to before we end tonight. If you got a question for Mike or me, we would love to answer it. Thank you again for joining us. Tuesday Night Live, we ought to do this more often. We
Let's
are
do it
going to
again.
do this more often. The second Tuesday every month, you're going to find us here on YouTube. We're going to stream. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to just chat it up. And
And next month on Monday, the second Monday of the month, I'll drive down to Nashville and inject Russell Moore with a little B12, make sure he's healthy and good to go.
right.
He was supposed to be here tonight, but he was ill and unable to make it. So
Yes, that's you got your assignment. Well, actually, okay, so if we want to, let's wrap up tonight by talking about how the sausage is made. So we're going to play a little game called Mountain or Molehill.
oh no,
Okay.
okay.
I had to give it a name. I had to.
Game. Yeah,
It's
there
a,
we
it's
go.
a little schmaltz. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a topic, and you're gonna tell me if it's a mountain or a molehill. Like
All
if
right.
it was, if it would be worth having an 18-minute segment conversation about it, or if this should just go to the cutting room floor. Okay.
right,
All
I
right.
love
Here's the first one. I know you're going to like this one because we disagree on this. President Donald Trump has directed the U.S. Treasury Department to stop minting new pennies, citing the high production costs and limited utility of the 1-cent coin. Mountain or molehill?
I say, well, I don't. Okay, so this is tricky because I wouldn't say that it's a molehill, but I do think that it was the right decision, right? The number one reason that the U.S. Mint should not be making more pennies is that it costs more to make a penny
I know.
than a penny. Like a penny is worth more
It's
than
like
a penny.
3 cents.
So, what on earth? Why do we even need the things? It's a waste. It's a waste of money to make the penny. So in my opinion, either figure out a cheaper way to make a penny, guys, or stop worrying about the penny.
Well, the nickel is even more expensive to make. I looked it up. It's cost 13 cents to make a nickel.
Yeah, see, we've got our priorities all screwed
Bitcoin, is that the only answer?
up. Don't get me started on Bitcoin.
Okay, here's the next one. The state of New York issued an advisory to hospitals to test incoming flu patients for H5N1, the avian bird flu that has been moving quickly through farms across the U.S. and driving up egg prices at the supermarket. Minnesota has now done the same. Concerns are growing about another pandemic that would affect humans. Mountain or molehill?
First of all, tell the fine people out there how much eggs were when you went to the store the other
They
day.
were $11.49 for a dozen. I said, I'm not
Unbelievable.
baking this week.
Yeah, your poor kids.
Yeah.
Not getting the Clarissa pie this week.
Nope.
So, I think this is a mountain because a couple of reasons. Now, do I think that we're going to have the pandemic? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know that. I think that if we do have a pandemic, you are going to see insane reactions on right and left about it because people are so mad about the way the pandemic was handled the last time around. And for instance, if it is H5N1, a respiratory virus that is transmitted, largely by breathing, guess what they're going to say we got to do? We're going to all have to go put on N95s. We're going to be masking up on airplanes, all that kind of stuff. And people will lose their dang minds. So I think this is a mountain, both because a respiratory virus like that kills a lot of people, kills kids. COVID didn't kill kids. So if it is bad, it's going to be real bad. And the mitigation, people are not going to be ready to embrace what we need to do for mitigation.
Okay. All right. Well, I got one last mountain or molehill for you. Why are you laughing?
Because I think I know which one it is. And it's an interesting one.
Oh.
Maybe I don't know which one it is.
Well, I'm going to go with this one.
I mean, I have the Google Doc, so okay.
Yeah, you do.
Go ahead.
Well, should I go for the first or the last then? That's the question.
I don't remember I don't have it
Okay.
right in front of me, so I don't have the order.
I'm
in
going to go
front
for
of
the
me.
last
So,
one.
All right.
All right. Here's the last one. SNL, Saturday Night Live, turns
Okay.
50 on Sunday and is celebrating with a 3-hour special. Is this a mountain or a molehill? Legacy Media.
I mean, SNL is what SNL has always been. So people often talk about like, well, there were these golden eras of SNL, And the reason they think of like the Belushi era of SNL as the golden era is because they've seen the best of tapes where they cut out all the crap that nobody laughed at. And the same thing goes for like the Will Ferrell era, the '90s eras, like all the rest. So I say all this to say I have the unpopular opinion of thinking that SNL's actually been pretty darn consistent for a very, very long time, for most of its history. There were bad years, but it's always been pretty good. And in a live comedy show that you write in 5 days,
It's like us on the Bulletin.
it's like us on the Bulletin with a lot more cocaine. So in their writing room is what I mean. So anyway, all that to say, I think this is, I think it's momentous, and I mean, this is a great sort of American icon of entertainment, and the fact that it's lasted 50 years, the fact that Lorne is still there, I mean, good grief, the guy's still doing it. It's incredible, and it's given us some great comedians, some great writers, people that we love these days, like John Mulaney and the brilliant stuff that he's done. Bill Hader has gone on to do some really incredible stuff in recent years. This show has given us a lot. So yeah, Mountain, absolutely, Mountain.
Yeah, it survived.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of amazing when you think about other programs. Yeah, it survived. Well, I hope you've all survived too, because we've been talking now for 45 minutes. It's been great to have you guys here with us tonight. Thanks so much for joining us on Tuesday Night Live at the Bulletin.
Quick note, comment from my wife, all caps, and I think she's absolutely right. The best season of SNL is whatever your senior year of high school was.
Oh, you know what?
That's
yes.
Right on. That's right on right there.
It's about nostalgia. It really is. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Because it's also like, it's also that point in your life where like you can, that you just have the freedom to stay up late enough to watch it.
Yes.
Like high school, early college. Yeah, that's good. She's
okay,
right.
So Sherry's saying, oh, see, now everybody's sharing their memories. Sherry likes Martin Short. This is the part
You're going
I
right
live
down
for.
the nostalgia. But yeah,
yes.
look at that. You're so happy.
For me, boy, talk about senior year of high school. It was Chris Kattan and Goth Talk.
Oh yeah.
That was my very favorite sketch.
And what was the one where he was the monkey?
No, I don't even remember.
You don't remember the monkey?
What his character was.
Oh, come on, Jamie! If you're out there, you know what his name was. Gosh,
wow.
Mango. Remember he was Mango? That was
wow.
great.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Sarah Cosper hit the nail on the head.
She did. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for joining us tonight. It's been great to be with you. Again, we will be here every month on the second Tuesday of the month. We'll just chat about the headlines, all the stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor, take your questions, and please join us on Friday for our regular roundtable episode wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for being with us, and have a great night.
Oh,
all right.
I think that went good.
I think that went well. Okay.